Okay.
Sorry, I'm having a little trouble here
Okay.
with the Twitter thing. Okay. Duration.
Okay.
Okay, I'll be right there.
Okay. I'll be sharing.
Thank you.
Sharing is caring.
Sharing is indeed caring.
Yes.
So,
Okay. Let me get over to your page,
okay, thank you.
your X page, so this way I can share it on X.
Okay. Uh, okay. So, okay. Hello, everybody. Sorry we're a little late getting started. This is Empowering Democracy, and I'm your host, Joe Firestone. And I'm here with my good friend, the host of Around the World with Dee and Friends, Dee Pierce.
Happy to be here. You've got a very active show for tonight.
Well, thank you very much, Dee. I hope it's an amazing show.
Yes.
Who else does that? Okay, let's begin by sharing a video produced by Nima
Why are you underground?
Rashid. Okay, dialogue works.
Hi, everybody. Today is Tuesday, July 22nd, 2025, and our friend Colonel Wilkerson is back with us. Welcome back, Dad.
Good to be with you, Nima.
Let's jump in and talk about the interview that the Iranian foreign minister had on Fox News. Here is what he said about the way that Iran sees the situation.
Respect. Obviously, it's not just the U.S. and Israel, but other world leaders who have concerns about the enrichment program. Why would you need to put it a half mile under a mountain facility to protect it if it was a completely peaceful program? That's just some of the thoughts about it. Secondly, President Trump has said he would not hesitate to launch more strikes if Iran tries to rebuild its enrichment program. So what's your response to President Trump?
Because of the constant threats by Israelis, by the United States in the past, we had no way but to protect our facilities and to protect our material and protect our scientists. So my message to the United States is that let's go for a negotiated solution for Iran's nuclear program.
Scientists at Harvard just witnessed something extraordinary. During a routine study of sound frequencies, they discovered a song.
Yeah. He wants negotiations. He wants talk with the United States, Larry. How do you find the way that Iran is behaving? And
Let me
your
just say
take.
first of all, that was such a stupid question. I mean,
That was exactly my thought the first time I heard that. I thought, what a stupid question. I mean, what would you do if the United States and Israel were looking to bomb your facilities or totally destroy them? I mean, would you put them inside a mountain?
I know, right?
I mean, I think you would if you had the capability to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd put them as deep as I could get it.
Exactly.
Israel has assassinated nuclear scientists, assassinated leaders of the military. Why are you underground? Of course you're underground. You don't want to, have such ease at doing it, at least you want to take some defensive measures. So that was such a stupid question, but typical of Fox. I continue to be amazed at the Iranians, Nima. I have to think that both the president, the foreign minister, and a couple of others that I've actually had a conversation with, and I don't think these professors at Tehran University would be dissembling, but maybe they're using the script that's been handed out. I don't know. They're trying to fool us now. That's all I can figure. I don't believe that, but that's what it looks like, because
It's an interesting thought, isn't it? That maybe now they're trying to fool us.
Mm-hmm.
So they get involved in a negotiation. And while, they're in a negotiation, maybe Trump is calling off the Israelis for at least a couple of days, and they do a surprise attack.
I would not be doing any of this were I they. I would be closing ranks, closing doors, closing diplomacy. I would be battening down the hatches, and I would be working fiercely to produce a nuclear weapon, because we have proven to them, regardless of their fatwa and the Islamic appreciation of nuclear weapons as anathema, and I can go along with that myself personally. I wish everyone believed that. But regardless of all of that, they live in an extremely dangerous world with a lunatic backed by an empire gone massively astray in the region, Bibi Netanyahu, a lunatic who lusts to resume the war with them and to now really take out their nuclear program. I'd build a bomb, and I presented it as a fait accompli. I might even test it as a fait accompli, as the North Koreans did, although they did it so deeply underground we could hardly detect the first one. It took a second one for us to confirm that they had actually done a test. Iran could do that too. They have terrain and depth to do that. And of course, they don't necessarily have to test. You can let the test be your first use. You still have a deterrent, because hardly anyone's going to test you as to whether or not you're telling the truth. I go back to the situation with Israel. There are people who don't believe Israel has an effective bomb. They don't believe they have it. Now, there are others who, cite JFK's very, very powerful attempt to keep Israel from getting a bomb as another reason to tack on to the conspiracy that actually assassinated John Kennedy. And I wouldn't doubt that for a moment. I don't have the bona fides to say it's true, but I do know that Kennedy was deadly against Israel getting the nuclear weapon. And I do know that he was very much for forcing AIPAC to register as a foreign agent and other things like that, that really made the Zionists in Israel angry. So that might have been another reason why Israel was a component of the assassination, along with the CIA and the military and others whom I'm convinced participated in that operation, whether it was rogue or not. So that's what I do if I were Iran. I'm just saying what I say as a military professional. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at what happened to Muammar Gaddafi and to Libya, and what has not happened to Kim Jong-un and North Korea. And there's only one conclusion that I can come to as a military professional, and that is the reason is North Korea has a nuclear weapon. In fact, they have probably 30 or 40 now.
Okay, and Iran had the capability to have 30 or 40 by now if they had wanted one. Now, maybe they did not want one because of the strength of their moral position. But if I were them, I think I agree with Larry.
Right. They need to get one now.
Yeah, they need to get one now. They need to get one now, if only to deter Trump.
Exactly.
Because the only lunatic here is not, Bibi Netanyahu. They're dealing with two lunatics.
Mm-hmm.
That's extraordinary deterrent, even to the empire. Iran has no such deterrent, and Iran is going to be treated as a subject of regime change until regime changes or until they obtain a nuclear weapon.
I don't know if Larry is right about that. And the reason why I say that is that the hypersonic missiles, the Iranians have, can be so devastating that if there is another exchange, with the Israelis, the Israelis could be destroyed. In other words, the Israeli regime could be destroyed without, the Iranians actually having a nuclear weapon.
Mm-hmm.
And once the regime is destroyed, then the United States might also back off, trying to harm Iran.
So, as much as I hate to say I would bless nuclear proliferation in the Levant, I don't want to say that. I don't want to do that. But speaking from the Iranians' perspective, I would say build your weapon.
Let this soft mineral melt under your tongue to improve vision so you can say goodbye to your optometrist for good. Did you know?
And to answer your question, finally, that doesn't seem to be what they're doing. It seems to be that they're seeking, once again, to be led down the primrose path by Donald Trump in the United States and to be once again disappointed. And this time could be serious disappointment. Because Israel will not relax. Israel wants a toady regime in Tehran. Israel wants a toady regime in Damascus. Israel wants a toady regime in Beirut.
Mm-hmm.
They've almost achieved the latter, and they're working on the middle, and they want ultimately Iran to be the same way. What do I mean by a toady regime? A regime that buckles completely under to Israel.
Okay, it could be Iran is planning or is actually setting a trap both for Israel, and for the United States. Just a few days ago, the news broke that S-500 systems were shipped to the Russians, inside, Syria, and that they're using the S-500 systems to try to defend the regime of head choppers in Syria, against the Israeli attacks. Supposedly, and I haven't seen confirmation of this, but supposedly 7 of the F-35s for Israel were knocked out of the sky by the S-500 system. Now, I don't know about that, but it seems clear that an S-500 system was shipped to the Russian forces in Syria, to their naval base. If they can ship one to Syria, they can ship one or more of the S-500s, to Iran, and we would not, necessarily know about it. If they ship a few of those to Iran, what are the implications of that for the United States sending over the big bombers, with the big bombs again? Certainly, the S-500s will be able to knock them out of the sky. If they can knock F-35s out of the sky, they certainly can knock those slow, big planes before they get to their target. The S-500s are designed to destroy stealth aircraft. The main defensive advantage those big bombers have is that they are stealth aircraft. I have no doubt S-500s can knock them out of the sky. So maybe the Iranians are planning for the United States, trying to draw the United States into another attack. Because if we do attack, they plan a devastating response which will destroy our credibility throughout the world. That might be an interesting thing for them to do.
Laurie, do you believe that the main objective of the attack on Iran was the regime change?
I think that's what the Congress passed with regard to Iraq and Iran. We forget that sometimes. Now, the Congress will say, as they have said to me, various people in the Congress, well, that doesn't mean it has to be by force of arms. It could be by a clandestine operation, like in 1953. Or, and this is actually what one of them said to me, or it could be by the Iranian people, and I would prefer this, he said, rising up and overthrowing their regime. And this individual, I said back to, Senator, what makes you think that if the Iranian people rose up and overthrew the theocracy, which you just called it, that the replacement government the Iranian people would then accept, put in place or whatever, would have any interest in terms of security in a very dangerous part of the world, different from the current Islamic regime? What makes you think that? Because Iran is still in the same place. It's still got the same enemies, Israel foremost, and it's still got basically the same things to secure. So I don't see how that's a solution, that they rise up. And you're thinking they're going to rise up and put Thomas Jefferson in charge. And oh, by the way, it's going to be the Thomas Jefferson that was in Virginia. That's stupid. That's just idiotic. But that's what we believe. And I've found that to be the views amongst most of the Congress.
Guys, if you suffer from neuropathy, stop drinking cold water now. I know it sounds like an exaggeration.
If we assume that was the case for the Israeli attack on Iran, and how can they think of a new attack on Iran? Because that's not going to happen.
I hope you're right. I hope you're right. But look at what Bibi's doing in Syria. And I think, you know, this morning I also had a conversation with, as I was telling you before we went on the air, with an individual in Munich who's telling me about Dachau no longer has the resonance for her that it once had, because she's seeing Gaza live streamed, the genocide live streamed to her. This is happening all over, but it's not happening fast enough. The shift is gradually taking place, even in this country. Polls are showing that people are questioning, as Marjorie Taylor Greene is questioning in the Congress, for example, now. A MAGA stalwart is questioning the association with Israel and not paying any attention to the American people while paying vivid attention to Israel. So it's shifting, but it's not shifting fast enough. And the consensus in this country and the consensus in Israel is that not only should Israel be allowed to effect regime change in Iran, we should help. And I've no doubt that however reluctant Trump might seem to be in offering that help, should Israel reopen the war, reignite the 12-day beautiful war, because I'm hearing also from some really good channels that Israel understands they did not do much. They did not do much to set Iran's nuclear program back. And so in the confines of his own intelligence community, Netanyahu knows that what he did was poke a stick in a bear and make the bear angry. Despite these comments being made by the president and the foreign minister, I think Israel's smart enough to know they have a real reason now to, as fast as possible, move to a bomb. And that scares them. It frightens the bejesus out of them. This isn't fake anymore. This isn't Netanyahu making things up. They really understand now that they have provoked Iran to becoming an existential threat to Israel. So they're going to take them on again. There's no question in my military mind that they're going to take them on again. And they're going to expect the U.S. to follow. And from what I've seen of Trump to this point, whether it's his mishandling of the Epstein affair or his mishandling of the NATO summit he was just at, or other things, Trump he'll follow. He may be reluctant, but he'll follow. And then we're in a real pickle, as I've said many times before, because we're not going to be able to defeat Iran to the point where we can march in and effect regime change. Iran is not the Iran we looked at in 1953. It's not the Iran that Saddam Hussein fought. It's not the Iran that we conducted operations against in Operation Praying Mantis and Operation Earnest Will. It's a very different Iran because what they did was they learned from those engagements with the United States. And they said to themselves, I'm particularly talking about the IRGC, but also the national military, never again. This is not going to happen again. We are going to work hard underground if we have to, and much of it did take place literally underground. And we're going to have the kind of weaponry that we need to ensure this doesn't happen again. We may go down, but we're going to take a hell of a lot of them with us.
I agree completely with Larry about that. And that scares me.
Mm-hmm.
What scares me about it is that Trump is just stupid enough to follow Netanyahu down the line on this. But on the other hand, sometimes he backs off.
Ladies, mix pink salt, lemon, and 2 fridge door ingredients and get ready to turn heads with your summer body. Today, I'm here to...
He backs off. He backed off, most notably with respect to the Houthis.
Mm-hmm.
He found that he wasn't able to stop, the attacks on Israel. And he was losing too much in the way of naval power. And he decided to back off. So he's capable, of backing off. When he attacked the nuclear sites, in Iran, he telegraphed that he was coming. He gave the Iranians a chance to strip the sites of the uranium and also the centrifuges, and they got a lot of their stuff out. And then when they retaliated, they contacted us, and they told us they were going to retaliate against us and that we ought to get our stuff out. And we did. So this says there are two sides here who really don't want to get into it. Also, the nature of Trump's attack on Iran. It was highly choreographed to be less threatening than it was to Iran. In other words, we could have done air raids that would have done a lot of major damage to Iran. then they would have retaliated against our bases all over the Middle East and done major damage to our bases. Obviously, Trump didn't want that. He didn't want to take a chance on being driven out of the Middle East by the Iranian missiles. So he backed off. He supported the Israelis in the start of the operation, and he helped the Israelis set up their attack, by doing talks with Iran, which were basically fake talks. So he supported them to that extent. But we did not support them to the extent they would have liked. So Trump does have the capability of backing off when he's scared. If the Israelis attack Iran and Iran immediately replies in a devastating way with its hypersonic missiles, then Trump could very well become afraid and decide to back off.
Larry, Israel is not even capable to defend itself with the case of Houthis, Yemenis. But how is that going to play out for their plan on Iran? With what we've seen in the attacks, how Iran was capable of hitting any target they wanted to hit in Israel.
A very good question by Nima.
To a certain extent, like Hitler or Stalin even, or Mao Zedong, any dictator really, as you get deeper and deeper into your dictatorship, you begin to believe your own rhetoric. Netanyahu is at that point now. He begins to believe his own rhetoric, whether it's vis-a-vis the Druze and his battle with the government of Syria, or whether it's Iran. What Netanyahu believes is that he can, in fact, defeat Iran. He can effect regime change as long as the United States helps him. Now, that, I think, is the height of suicidal tendencies, if you will, because I think Netanyahu is embarked on the ruination of the Jewish state. As I've said many times before, Israel will not be a Jewish state very much longer. It is untenable for it to be a Jewish state. That it might survive in some other form is another matter altogether. I don't see that happening right now, but it could. So we've got a dictator who believes his own rhetoric, who believes it even to the exception of his intelligence agencies, like Trump. Both of them, same way. They make their own intelligence. And Netanyahu, like Hitler, really from about the time he invaded Czechoslovakia to the time he invaded France, where it really put the icing on the cake in the spring of 1940, like Hitler, success breeds a lot of following. Success breeds a lot of allies. Success breeds a lot of confidence from your own people. That's where Netanyahu is now, especially with that group that has taken over Israel. And let's face it, they have taken over Israel. The radical Zionists who've always been there from the very beginning in 1948, even before that. They've been killers, they've been terrorists, they've been some of the world's worst terrorists. They've been there all along, lurking in the background, surfacing every now and then going and hiding again. They surfaced with Sharon when they massacred the two camps or orchestrated the massacre of the two camps in Lebanon in 1983, I think it was. Now they're back, and they've been back. Sharon helped, Netanyahu facilitated, and now Netanyahu has capitalized on it all. So this is the greater Zion, this is the greater Israel group of people.
If you haven't exercised in years, you have to start small with my beginner-friendly Tai Chi class.
They want all the territory they can get their hands on. Not just Syria, not just Lebanon, not just Gaza, not just the West Bank, not just East Jerusalem. They want parts of Egypt, if not all of Egypt, and they want parts of Iraq, and they want all of Jordan. And they will not rest until they have it. Iran stands in the way of that happening. Fast forward a little and come up into the ether that I'm talking about when I say we're already in World War III. The United States must take out Iran in terms of it being anything other than a toady state, a state like it was, even worse, under the Shah, doing our wishes. It cannot stop China if it lets its base road initiative break through, so to speak, anywhere. Because once it breaks through, China becomes a magnet for everything that the West is doing.
That's a very, very good point. So what Larry is saying is we have to beat up Iran because we have to get them out of the Belt and Road Initiative, and we have to get them out of BRICS, or we will sustain a very serious geopolitical, geoeconomic defeat.
Iran is a place, just as Ukraine was a place where China expected to have a southern entrepot, if you will. Ukraine, a central entrepot. And I'm convinced now the reason their interest in the Arctic is so revealed, as I found out from talking with my buddies at the Pentagon who are looking at the Arctic as a new theater of war. Now that China's looking at that, they are thinking about that being another path through which that smooth sailing that it will be eventually across really most of Russia, Northwest Passage, whatever you want to call it. That's going to be a dynamic new theater of commerce, at least until climate change wipes us all out.
Commerce and maybe conflict. Because if there's potential for commerce, there's also potential for attacking the commerce and hence for conflict.
Maybe 50 years or so. And Russia and China are now in partnership. Russia has the dominant frontage, if you will, on that route. So now they have a central route, a northern route, and a southern route. But what's the empire done? It's blocked all three, with Ukraine, with its efforts in the Arctic, which are only now beginning to grow, and with the war with Iran. It's blocked it. And that's what we're going to continue to try to do. That's why I say we're in World War III, and we're in it with China and Russia.
By the way, news broke today that Canada has made a deal with Greenland. And Greenland has been rejecting the overtures of the United States, but has decided to accept this deal from Canada instead. It's a $3 billion deal. I don't know the extent of it, but that was an important piece of our plans for the Arctic to get control, of Greenland in some way.
These are the opening skirmishes, if you will. And like World War I, they have enormous economic factors that are pushing the empire one way and China and Russia the other way. It doesn't have to be. A smart president, a smart imperial president would back off, use diplomacy, use what economic might we have left. And I say that with great sadness because if you read Steve Wertheim's article the other day, you know that 60 to 70% of the countries in the world today, about 138 countries, do more trade with China than they do with the United States. And 2/3 of that number do twice as much. And if you look at any measure of economic might right now, China is winning. They're winning hands down. We're trying to stop that. And instead of cooperating, instead of taking a second place, if you will, instead of being a country that seeks to compete, strategically compete, tactically compete with China and with Russia, and to draw upon each other's strengths and to meet the challenges we have to meet, like the climate crisis, like nuclear weapons. We're fighting it. We're fighting it tooth and nail. And as I've said before, Katie barred the door. At the end of the day, when we are losing badly, watch out, because we still have 6,000 nuclear warheads. If I were Xi Jinping or Vladimir Putin, that would be foremost in my mind all the time, is that going down, a dying elephant can thrash a lot of grass. That elephant has nuclear weapons. So I have to be very careful about how I contest the shift in power. I'm winning. I'm going to win ultimately. But I've got to be very careful about how I deal with this empire, because they have nuclear weapons and they have an absolute moron in charge of them.
So there it is. That's the first part of this interview that I wanted you to see and consider. And that last consideration of Larry's, that if we're losing, and it's clear we're losing, how dangerous is a nuclear power with all of those warheads and a moron running things? That question is very pregnant. Let's move forward, okay, in this video to roughly to here.
Hi, I'm Mark Elias, a lawyer for the Democrats, and I need your help to join me in standing up.
They need to clarify on that. They don't want to do this. And here is what she said.
Mr. The Ayatollah has said death to America, and that means death to Trump. That is from the Supreme Leader. The New York Post had the Iranian fatwa crowdfunding effort claims to have raised $40 million for bounty on President Trump's head. The campaign, organized by a group known as the Blood Covenant, comes after multiple Iranian clerics issued fatwas or death warrants against Trump. So you can see why the administration is looking at some of these signals, saying that you are doing that.
No, I think they are all propagandas. You know, we have always said, the Supreme Leader and other officials in Iran have always said that death to America is in fact death to the, hegemonic policies of the United States, not to the people of United States. Yes, there are some perhaps radicals, persons or groups here and there in different places, inside, outside of Iran, who may say something like what you said, but that has never been our policy, and they will never be in our policy in the future. This is not our policy to kill anybody outside Iran, let alone the president of another country.
You're muted.
Why are they so obsessed with this question? Each and every time they're finding an official from Iran, they're asking that you want to assassinate Donald Trump.
They get their intelligence from the same place John Bolton gets his intelligence, and incidentally $40,000 or $50,000 every time he talks to them. The MEK, the Mujahideen Aqat. They lie, they cheat, they steal, they will say anything, they will write anything to defame Iraq or Iran. There's no truth in it 90+% of the time. Iran would be absolutely insane right now at this particular juncture in the relationship with the empire to try and assassinate Donald Trump. Nima, mark my words here, Bibi Netanyahu would conduct a false flag operation at the drop of a dime to make.
At the drop of a dime, at the drop of a hat, at the drop of a bomb.
It looked like Donald Trump was hunted by the Iranians. I'm not saying he would shoot him or kill him, but I am saying he would conduct a false flag and Mossad would be right there doing it with him to make it look like the Iranians were trying to kill Donald Trump. I'm convinced the incident in London and the incident in Buenos Aires were orchestrated by the Israelis to gain sympathy for them. This is the sort of thing they do. So this is dangerous. This is extremely dangerous. What Fox is doing is acting as a catalyst for that sort of thing to happen. They don't do their research. They don't do any kind of background analysis. They listen to the MEK as if it were the CIA. It's crazy. I mean, that's where we are, Nima. In this country, that's where we are.
Okay, the MEK is a terrorist group that has arisen out of Turkey. The Turks are bent on the destruction of that particular terrorist group. It's a Kurdish terrorist group. It operates in Turkey, but also operates in Iraq, and it's been operating in Iran, okay, as well. But it started in Turkey.
You mentioned the situation in Syria, Larry. We know that there are differences within the Druze community in Syria. What is the role of Israel in somehow making these differences bolder, or maybe somehow trying to get closer to some of these factions who were not so close to Israel, in order to, I don't know, to fight the government, it's not the government, it's gang running, unfortunately, Syria. But what can we understand from the situation, the complexity of what's going on in Syria?
I think Israel's number one strategic objective with regard to Syria right now, and just to put Iran aside for a moment, because it all boils down ultimately to Iran, because that's the last real obstacle to Israel's hegemony in the region. And our hegemony, remember, we use Israel. I think their objective in Syria right now is to get rid of the leader. Ultimately, to get rid of that leader, because they don't like him. They don't think that he's ultimately going to be aligned with their interests. He's too much of a future possibility of opposition to Israel, effective opposition to Israel. Unlike Assad, he's got a tender base right now, if you will, I think. I'm hearing a lot from Damascus about him, and he's got to make sure that he can get every disparate element in Syria as possible behind him. And Israel has defanged him, really. All that bombing that Israel did, he hasn't got a whole lot left to fight Israel with. And this is the reason they did this, Nima. That's the reason they did it. They were planning all along of taking more and more of Syria. And so what they're doing now is using the Druze, I think, and the Druze are somewhat reluctant in their, what you might call the less than leadership of the Druze. I don't think they're very willing to go along with this. But he's using money, and he's using bribery, and he's using other methods that Israel is so good at using to convince the leadership, at least, that they are better off if they side with him and with Israel, at least on a temporary basis. Now, let me footnote that and say they would be fools to do that, because he will turn on them in a heartbeat when it becomes conducive for him to do so. All he wants them to do right now is round up their people, as it were, and make sure they don't oppose what Israel wants to do. He doesn't want them in his rear when he goes deeper and deeper into Syria if they're antagonistic to him. He would love to have the majority of them on his side as he goes on deeper into Syria, which he will do, I guarantee you.
For months, we have all been asking for a sustained ceasefire. Gaza's population is on the brink of famine. Every hour counts. Children are starving to death. make a donation. Support these humanitarian organizations. Make sure the funding is there the moment the doors open so that the aid can reach those in need. This cannot wait. This is not a debate. This is our job as human beings.
It's got.
I thought that ad was worth actually playing. Going on with the main show here.
To be, though, an ancillary theater for him right now because he's got his hands full taking over Lebanon, and that's his goal, to take over Lebanon, not just. We built that largest. Why did we build the largest, freaking, most expensive embassy in the world in Lebanon? First of all, because it's not really a diplomatic place. It's a place for the CIA, Mossad, MI6, and others to operate out of. Second of all, because we know what Netanyahu is going to do. And we want a big place there to kind of watch what he does because he's going to take over Lebanon.
To watch what he does and to assist him in trying to take over Lebanon. But they all better watch out because Hezbollah is on the point of coming back and being stronger than ever, I think. If there's another war with Iran, the Israelis will not only have to contend with the Houthis hitting them, but also a new and more dangerous Hezbollah hitting them as well. So you should mark my words about that.
No doubt in my mind. He's also going to take over Jordan. This is what they planned at this final solution conference. They planned the greater Israel and how they're going to affect it. They're going to push into Syria. The Druze will be allies, if possible, initially, and then they'll take care of the Druze. Once Erdogan awakens to the fact that he's a day late and a dollar short, one wonders what will happen there, particularly since they're a member of NATO, such as NATO is today, and because they are trying to maintain their bona fides with the empire. Mistakenly, I think, but they are. They don't want to go fully with China and Russia yet. So all of these dynamics in the Levant are playing into Netanyahu's plans right now. But I think ultimately they're going to go asunder, and they're going to go asunder on Iran. I really think they are, because he's going to bite off more than he can chew, and he's going to drag the United States into that meal, and we're going to lose too. But as I've said so many times before, anywhere on this arc of crisis where we begin to lose badly, and I'm talking we go to conscription and nobody shows up for the draft, and we are totally out of capability to do anything conventionally, watch out. That's what I've said before. Watch out, because we will go nuclear. And you're talking about this entire arc of crisis that we've created through proxies mainly, suddenly becoming the empire's responsibility to continue execution of. We can't. We simply can't. And Netanyahu is going to be caught up in that. It's going to be Bibi's last day, if you will, in the sun, because his big daddy, his orchestrator, his teacher, his real mentor, the United States of America, is going to be in existential peril. Israel will not survive. I know people think, well, geez, World War III, that's great. That's the same way people were thinking in 1914. Same way people were thinking. Impossible, utterly impossible. And yet you had people who were orchestrating. Winston Churchill, for example, he knew it was coming. He knew it was coming because he was prepping it. Others like him were prepping it. Others in France were prepping it. They could not let Germany overwhelm their restoration of their empire.
Why did Amazon send me $20,000? Because I use Amazon AI. I'm going to show you.
We cannot let China overwhelm the restoration of our empire. What have we been doing since 9/11 but trying to restore our empire? Actually, since the end of the Cold War, trying to restore our empire. And we've been failing at every approach. We've been failing. We're not going to ever give that up, I'm afraid. We cannot go quietly into that second place position. We just can't. Too many billionaires are against it.
And that's it. I thought Larry's perspectives were extremely interesting all through that. And I think there's enough detail there so you understand why he thinks World War III has actually started. It's a combination of the need the Israelis perceive to expand to a greater Israel and the need we perceive to restore the dominance of the American empire in the world. And he thinks neither we nor the Israelis are prepared to give up our goals. And so these things we're doing right now, and these things the Israelis are doing right now, from Larry's point of view, turn out to be the opening battles of World War III, the opening skirmishes of World War III. Also, to that, we can add the war against the BRICS, which we will be talking about when we get to the next video. So, let's see what comments we have, and let's see what other folks have to say about this. I see we're not having too many comments.
Yeah, Evelina, she's not able to watch it on YouTube or X, so she's disappointed.
Right. So she's disappointed. And evidently, people who watch on YouTube are not active tonight either.
Right. I was going to say, if you want to rebroadcast it once the show's over with, and then you could rebroadcast it and, re-show it again and have it on Facebook so those that missed it could see it.
I'm not entirely sure how to rebroadcast it. How do I do that?
In StreamYard, when you hit the three dots on the side, when you go into the library and it shows the show,
Yeah.
shows, and it has it where you could rebroadcast it. And you choose the time that you want to do so.
I can rebroadcast it to Facebook if Facebook allows it, but I've been having that error when I try to stream it to Facebook in the first place.
Right.
So whether Facebook will cooperate or not, I don't know.
Right, you're going to have to get that Facebook issue straightened out.
I'm going to have to get the Facebook issue, and I don't know what's causing it. I'm not at all clear. Okay, let us go to our next piece then. And that is an interview by Danny Haifong with Pepe.
Huge expectations and everything that was actually.
Wait a minute, let me get that.
Culture, Sputnik.
And see where I want to come in. Yeah, I'm coming in from the beginning there and going to about 32 minutes. So here we go.
The cradle and much more. Pepe, good to be with you.
Good to be with you. Cheers, everybody.
Of course. Well, Pepe, I wanted to get to your piece, actually. You wrote a very good article in Strategic Culture recently that summarizes this war on BRICS. You wrote, it's 1, 2, 3, what are we fighting for? NATO's wars, circus ringmaster shtick.
We went over that article here a few streams ago. But now let's see what Pepe has to say about it.
I'm guessing you're referencing Donald Trump, only accelerates the BRICS Global South high-speed train. So Pepe, let's talk about it. Trump's threats have come against BRICS amid a summit that you just attended, held by BRICS in Brazil.
Absolutely.
Talk about why Donald Trump and NATO, both of them together, increasingly sending threats and issuing deep warnings to BRICS. What is Russia, China, and Iran in particular doing? Because these are the three powers you mentioned are the ones under the biggest of the threats.
What you do not want to do is affirmations. So every morning I start my day by asking myself something like 27.
To draw this kind of ire, Pepe?
Well, it's a long answer. And I cannot give you the Hollywood 25-word pitch. Okay, let's try something in the middle, right? It's not an accident that Trump started going completely off the rails immediately after the end of the BRICS summit in Rio. In fact, the day after. Well, obviously, he doesn't know what BRICS is. And as extra confirmation, I'm going to quote him directly to all of you, our audience. Start quote. When I heard about this group from BRICS, so it's not BRICS, it's a group from BRICS. 6 countries, basically. So he doesn't even know how many countries are in BRICS or are BRICS partners, etc. I hit them very, very hard. And if they ever really form in a meaningful way, so BRICS is not formed yet, according to Trump. It will end very quickly, I'll tell you. They won't be gone very long. I don't think they'll even do it. Do it means what? De-dollarization is the only thing in his mind. They're virtually afraid to me. End quote. Well, I could rest my case now, but okay, let's get into some juicy details. Obviously, Trump didn't read the 137, 138 plus points BRICS Rio Declaration, which was issued in the first day in Rio. It was on it was issued on the second day of the summit, but very, very early, before the end. Summit was on a Sunday or a Monday. This was released on a Monday, which is basically BRICS telling the global South and the world at large, what are they doing? Essentially, working for a different system of international relations, geopolitically and geoeconomic, and away from total domination by Western institutions. This means this is not going to be Bretton Woods 2 or 3.0. This is post-Bretton Woods, essentially. And everyone with a brain in DC and around know what that means. Trump, somebody must have whispered a mantra of 3 or 4 words, and that's the only thing that registers in his mind, because as you know, he only registers sound bites and closed captions, very, very close, not more than 4 words and not more than 5 seconds. So somebody told Trump, this group is going to de-dollarize. And this is the only thing that his mind retained. So obviously, every time that he mentions BRICS, which he still doesn't know what it is, what it means, how many countries, you name it, nothing.
Isn't Spain in BRICS, Pepe? Anyway, continue.
Exactly. And by the way, Spain is in BRICS, and this is 6 countries, basically, to quote him again, right? Okay. It's de-dollarization. So obviously, because, as we all know, once again, and it's worth repeating, Trump doesn't read, period. And when I mean doesn't read, he doesn't read anything. If it's not a soundbite, if it's not a Fox News segment, forget it. It doesn't know anything exists, in fact. Can you imagine Trump trying to read something like this? This is a very, very detailed Shanghai Institute of Strategic Studies report on BRICS, and they started in Kazan all the way to Rio. And they released this report before this, 2 or 3 months before the summit. Trump wouldn't even read the title of something like this. And this report like this explains not only what BRICS are doing, but what they have been doing since the summit in October last year in Kazan, all the way to Rio a few days ago. On top of that, Trump, of course, is absolutely desperate when he hears this mantra, de-dollarization. So what happened immediately after the BRICS in Rio? He unleashes or threatens to unleash 50% tariffs on all Brazilian exports to the United States. Very, very interesting.
Over 8,000 men have permanently broken free from the P word by watching one single video training that you can actually watch by clicking the link below. But
the US has a trade surplus with Brazil. For the past 15 years, it's around $400 billion. So this is not about US-Brazil trade. It's a completely different thing. This is an attack on Brazil and an attack on Brazil's domestic policy and trade policy as well. That's where the Bolsonaro drama steps in. By the way, while we were talking now, there is a very strong possibility that Bolsonaro may go to jail between today and tomorrow. This is how hard it gets. So when Trump launched this threat, precisely timed immediately after the end of the BRICS summit, which was overall a success, and many of us were not expecting it. The expectations were very, very low. But in the Brazilians are very, very good at pulling a surprise at the last minute. Very, very good. And this is exactly what they did in Rio. And especially because from the point of view of Lula, like I saw Lula in action at the BRICS Business Forum. I was right in front of him during the BRICS Business Forum day. And many of us, we understand Lula's body language and his acts. Just to give an example to all of you. He has the text of his speech enveloped in a fine red velvet container, let's put it this way. And he was doing back and forth with his aides. He did it at least 4 times. He was changing his speech on the go while he was waiting to get on stage to deliver the opening speech for the BRICS Business Day. Because he was listening to what was going on. He was receiving updates on his phone all the time. He was looking at his phone at the time. And then he delivered a brilliant speech. And you could see that at least 60 or 70% he was improvising. And he's brilliant when he does that. And to complement that, he had
Your screen is frozen.
Anwar Ibrahim, the prime minister of Malaysia, immediately after him.
Yeah.
And the room was packed with businessmen from everywhere in the global south, mostly Brazilians, but from all over the global south. When Ibrahim started speaking, people were like, for them was the first time that they saw one of the best statesmen in Asia and in the world for that matter. And Ibrahim is a master of concision, sharpness, and excellent delivery. And Anwar Ibrahim explained to the room in a little over 5 minutes what BRICS is all about. So when you put these two speeches together, it was a masterpiece from two very, very good statesmen, and focusing especially on the geoeconomic aspects of BRICS. Nobody talked about de-dollarization. Very, very important. It was about doing business. It was about integrating the BRICS regions into doing more business in their national currencies, of course. And Lula, he made a special mention to all these different BRICS groups that are linked to the main BRIC business group, which is basically businessmen. There is a group, I don't know, many of you in our audience probably don't know that. There is an institution called Women's BRICS Groups. These are women-led companies all across the BRICS spectrum with their own projects, with their own sources of finance, or looking for their sources of finance. So Lula made a mention specifically to all of them from every nation part of BRICS. That demonstrates the respect that he has for this organizations. And there is also a body that is, we can call it the BRICS Civics Council, which basically congregates civil society in BRICS members. After this, the start of the day, Lula received personally representatives of these three organizations, the Civics Council, the Women's Council, and the larger BRICS Business Council. He said, well, the work that you're doing is absolutely outstanding. And this is the kind of work that you don't see in headlines anywhere, you know. And later during the day, it was fantastic. This was in a former warehouse in front of Guanabara Bay. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful setting. People were absolutely drooling, you know, drinking excellent Brazilian coffee. And then I could meet many of them. I met, for instance, an extraordinary woman who's the head of the Egyptian chapter of the Women's BRICS Council. And they do grassroots work, but with the BRICS umbrella behind it, you know.
I started Tai Chi at 50. Now I'm 68, and doctors ask me for advice.
Very, very important. And on the BRICS Civics, the BRICS Civic Council, let's put it this way, they had 2 days of meetings, plus another meeting on the other side of the bay. We went to this one, and the result was a letter that was later delivered to, guess what? The leader of Cuba, Diaz-Canel. He was the first leader of a BRICS partner that received this letter. Was a discussion about media freedom around the world and a BRICS media interconnection to escape the domination of Western institutions or big tech. So all these things, of course, you don't see these things in Western media coverage, which was virtually zero. You don't see them in headlines anywhere because this is a lot of work done in the background. But the leaders know that this is working. Anwar Ibrahim knows very well about the work of all these organizations. And it's not an accident that he invited Lula to go to the ASEAN summit in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia next October. Very, very important, because this is a synergy between the largest South American representative of BRICS and the largest economy in Latin America, for that matter, and Southeast Asia. And Lula can learn
Yeah, it's frozen again. I wonder why it freezes like that. Joe? Hello? Can you hear me?
A lot about ASEAN integration on the spot. So all these things are immensely important in terms of how this integration is advancing, little by little, but sometimes leaps and bounds, in fact. Very, very important. So when you compare all this activity and auspicious interactions, for instance, we had outstanding conversations with some of the best Chinese academics that were visiting BRICS on the sidelines as well. We had a special debate at one of Rio's universities organized by the Beijing Club, which is a top of the line think tank, which was more or less restarted only 2 years ago in Beijing with some of the best Chinese academics of all top universities, Tsinghua, Renmin, Fudan, you name it, you know. And when you put this all together, this Xi Jinping style peoples to peoples exchanges, this is part of this gigantic study on BRICS pillars. One of the key BRICS pillars is increase these peoples to peoples contacts, not only in the business sphere, but in academia, in media, culturally, etc. So, just this small resume for all of you is to give an idea of how deep and how complex is this BRICS interaction. It's not only 10 heads of state sitting on a table for 2.
Can you hear me now? So D, can you hear me now? I can't hear you. This is strange. We're having some technical problems with this. Okay, but let me go on. If you were able to hear the video, okay, in the last few minutes, what you heard was a narrative of what went on at BRICS in terms of the frequency and intensity of contacts among the various nations that are part of BRICS. Now, this BRICS conference wasn't forecast to be as important as some of the other BRICS conferences were. But the expectations clearly were underestimating what was going to happen, because it turned out that the Brazilians set the stage for lots of cross-cultural contacts and economic contacts as well. I'm going to find out if Dee can hear me. I think we're having technical problems with this broadcast. And I don't know why. Oh, Dee says she can hear me. Okay, that's good. Because for a while, I don't think she was able to hear me. But I hope everyone has been able to hear the video that I've been playing. That's really the important thing. Let's go on with it now.
Days in Rio. No, it goes way beyond that. And with the partners around. And the fact that they discuss all that plus the bigger picture of larger integration, geoeconomic and geopolitical. So you can imagine those very mediocre people around Trump not even beginning to understand the extent of this game. And of course, this is all reduced to this mantra of de-dollarization. And to come back to Trump's reaction, why Brazil?
So Pepe's central point here is that a lot more was going on during this conference than simply de-dollarization. There was very little discussion of the attempts to de-dollarize. I mean, that was, there was lots of discussion of doing business in local currencies. But as far as replacing the dollar was concerned, they weren't discussing that much. What they were mainly doing was discussing doing business with each other. And there was a huge amount of that, okay, that was going on. Meanwhile, Trump is launching hostile moves against BRICS because he thinks BRICS is trying to de-dollarize. Here is D coming back in. Hello, D.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you now, and I guess you can hear me.
Yes, I can. We got that straightened out.
Yeah, we got that straight. That I don't know how long it was going on, though. That was evidently some time. We've got some pretty good news here. We're close to maybe 5,000 now.
Oh, that's good.
So things are going well from that sort of standpoint. But anyway, I just was saying that one of the things Pepe was emphasizing is that there were a huge number of commercial interactions and people-to-people interactions that were going on at BRICS in Brazil. But there wasn't much talk of de-dollarization.
Right.
Instead, there was a lot of talk of doing business in local currencies.
Okay.
Now, Trump maybe is interpreting this as, de-dollarization, because when they do these local transactions, they're not doing them in dollars.
Right.
Okay, that's important. But the main plans of BRICS to de-dollarize weren't spoken of a lot, okay, at the BRICS meeting that just occurred. And I think that's very interesting. So I'll go on with the video now.
Okay.
Very simple. Because it was identified by people around him as the weak link in BRICS to step up the hybrid war into a hardcore war against the BRICS as a whole. The war against Iran is part of a hot war front. Iran is a full member of BRICS. Very, very important. Brazil is not only a full member, but one of the founders of BRICS. But it's not the hot war front. It's the geoeconomic trade war against Brazil. And obviously with no background, no previous study, and relying on information, basically propaganda, relied to the Trump camp by one of Bolsonaro's sons, Eduardo.
Ladies, mix pink salt, lemon, and 2 fridge door ingredients and get ready to turn heads with your summer body. Today.
And basically we can say that Eduardo forced Trump's hand.
Okay. So that is really a very interesting comment, because what he's saying is Trump started this war on BRICS based on propaganda from Bolsonaro's son, who Trump was talking to for some reason. But he's making the point that Trump knows nothing about what was really going on at BRICS.
No, he doesn't. And as he pointed out earlier, too, is the fact Trump doesn't read.
Yes, Trump doesn't read. Okay, but also, what Trump has been doing is ruining trade between the United States and Brazil, and he's doing it on the basis of no knowledge of the situation.
Exactly. It's infuriating.
It's infuriating and it makes no sense. And it especially makes no sense if you're interested in trading with countries that will let you have a surplus with them. Supposedly,
Right.
Trump is extremely interested in that. But here's a country that's allowing the United States to run a trade surplus with it. And Trump is trying to tariff them, to cut off trade in order to benefit someone inside of that country who Trump wants to take over the government. So, from an economic point of view, and Trump's particular economic point of view, what he's saying makes, or what he's doing makes no sense.
No, it
To
doesn't.
slap these actions, this tariffs against Brazil, in the whole process could be considered a national treason. And because it's the Bolsonaro clan as a whole are being seen by the majority of the Brazilian population for the past 2 weeks or so as practicing national treason. So this is very, very serious because he has an overall umbrella in the BRICS sphere, but it's also direct American interference in the foreign policy and domestic policy of a third country, which happens to be one of the BRICS founders and members. So I think this is the short version of an extremely complicated process. For instance, just to give an idea, all of you guys, after the summit, I stayed in Brazil for a few extra days for a few conferences, 2 conferences, one in Rio, one in Sao Paulo, podcasts, etc. And the country was on fire after that. What Trump did was to unify Brazilians of all classes because they saw it as the American bombing of Iran. They saw it as a direct attack on Brazilian sovereignty. And that gave Lula exactly what he didn't have so far, or he was not exploiting it so far. His slogan, and the slogan is sovereignty, once again. And this slogan happens to be what drives Russia, China, and Iran, especially, 3 of the top BRICS. And now is also moving Brazil. So
that point is so very important that the internal politics is being affected. Okay, Brazilians are coming together, and they're coming together because of Trump's attacks. Now, we see a similar process in Canada because some of the Canadians, at least, have been coming together because they've been perceiving Trump's tariff policies as attacks on Canada. But also in Mexico, especially in Mexico, sovereignty is the watchword there. Okay, and Claudia Sheinbaum is using that to bring the Mexicans together in a great wave of defiance, against the United States, and a great wave of change in trading patterns. And the Mexicans and the Chinese are benefiting from the changes in trading patterns, and the U.S. is, getting more and more isolated.
Exactly. And something we've seen also how Trump, where the Middle East is concerned, him thinking he's going to change things, and we see his move thought he was going to change things with Iran. And now the Iranian people are more united.
And now so he's going around the world uniting a bunch of nations against us. Okay, and the net result is to commercially isolate us from the rest of the world, which is exactly the result that we don't want. But that's what we're getting from this presidency of Donald Trump. It could be, it's shaping up as a monumental disaster.
Mm-hmm.
It's only, a little more than 6 months old, a few days more than 6 months old. And it's shaping up as a presidency that could really result in tremendous austerity and economic suffering here in the United States. Not talking about budgetary austerity now, that too, of course, but austerity in trade, preventing us from getting things that we usually get from other nations that we need for various purposes here in the United States. What Trump is doing is going to begin affecting consumers in terms of rising prices. And I think we're seeing that already, in the markets. I think we're beginning to experience a wave of price increases in grocery stores that are reminiscent of what we had when the supply chains were broken due to COVID. And Trump is creating that himself with his monumentally stupid, trade policies. Anyway, let us go on.
The blowback on Trump was immediate. And obviously, nobody in his among his advisors has an IQ over room temperature to even start to
IQ over room temperature.
That's a good way of putting it.
Think about this would be possible, right, Danny?
True. Yeah, well, I actually wanted to we can play because Anwar Ibrahim's his speech at the BRICS summit was Anwar Ibrahim. Yeah, we can listen to just a bit of it. It is incredible, and it gets to exactly what you just said, Pepe. That de-dollarization is a trigger, and we've talked about on this show how there's this idea by the U.S., NATO, that they can cut the head off the snake, right? Russia, China, now increasingly Iran. That BRICS and multipolarity will just crumble and fall. But this speech should give pause to that. Here's what he said.
It is a historic moment. For those of you who have been following the antecedents of history, will realize the attempt to save the voice of newly emerging economies and countries post-colonialism was by Sukarno of Indonesia, Chao En-lai of China, Jawaharlal Nehru of India, Nkrumah of Africa. It was a bold attempt to ensure that the voice of conscience, those struggling for freedom and justice, is heard. Not much success. It was a bold attempt. Then we have a non-aligned movement proceeding that. We have G77 still not achieving the desired results. Now, I salute you, President Lula, for having the courage to proceed with a clear vision, a clear commitment to voice the concerns, aspirations of the people, particularly of the Global South.
Let this soft mineral melt under your tongue to improve vision so you can say goodbye to your optometrist for good. Did you know?
But why are we particularly encouraged? Because it is no longer an effort purely of political leadership. Political leaders have a role to initiate this reform. But what is spectacular in BRICS is because of the participation of the business community, the private sector, that would complement this effort and make sure that the voice of reason, the voice for justice, is heard and implemented together with the political leadership and the business community that we see today, women, youth, and the private sector. I salute you all for this.
So, Pepe, he makes a direct connection to the non-aligned movement.
In 55.
It's incredible.
Where do you hear a global leader speaking about Bandung in 55 openly in a major forum?
And connecting, Pepe. And he said,
with the non-aligned movement and what's happening now. It's brilliant.
And economics and naming this is the business council meeting, the private sector aligned with a movement for justice in the global south, which generally doesn't jive together, but that's what BRICS countries, that's what These countries are attempting to do a real kind of reigniting of the true aspirations of the anti-colonial movement. And I think that is what really gets Donald Trump and the rest of the ruling elites, if we call them, very, very, very scared and angry.
Very important point from Danny here. Okay, that is the true challenge.
The ruling classes in the U.S., they understand that. Absolutely. And that's why they are scared to death. Because now it's not the non-aligned movement, which was crushed by the U.S. in the 60s and in the early 70s. It's not the G77. Nobody pays attention to the G77. Now you have the number one economic power on the planet, the number one nuclear and hypersonic power on the planet, some of the largest emerging markets on the planet altogether. And it's transcontinental. And it's really a representation of the global South. If you take the 10 full members of BRICS and the 10 partners and the 30-something who are in the queue waiting to be admitted, like yesterday, that's the real deal, finally. And they have a roadmap. It was very complicated to get to this final declaration in Rio. We learned that the Sherpas worked 24/7 the last few days, including the night before. And it was not because some idiots in the US were saying that Iran was blocking the declaration because the declaration was not strong enough on condemning Israel and the US. No, it was because they wanted to get the precise language that would not be confrontational when read by the Americans, but at the same time affirming unequivocally everything that they are doing geopolitically and geoeconomically. And when you read the declaration, it's very well thought of, it's very well organized, it's very detailed, and the language is not confrontational at all. But it's firm, which is many of us were not expecting it to be that firm. So in the end, it was great because to a large extent, okay, this is written by Sherpas, but it has to be approved by leaders. And the final approval in Rio was Lula's. So this reflects very much Lula's approach to BRICS, which may be, let's say, not seventh gear as Russia and China, but it's already fifth gear, which is pretty good considering the circumstances, So this was a major success. And even with the role of India, they sent a huge delegation to Rio. They had a special a state meeting. Modi had a state meeting with Lula afterwards. Modi was beaming, we're going to start a strategic relationship with Brazil. But this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was what the Chinese and the Russians had done in the background, leading to the summit. And this is something we discussed extensively with our Russian and Chinese friends in Rio. There was the second largest delegation in Rio was Russian. The Chinese were probably the third or fourth, but they sent their best academics, very, very important. And they had a lot of sideline meetings as well. And one of the most important things, I would say that the crucial moment, very few people paid attention when it happened. There were 2 days of the NDB meeting. The NDB had a separate meeting from the summit, the New Development Bank, the BRICS Bank. It was sort of their annual meeting, right? And it took place in Rio, presided by Dilma Rousseff, former president of Brazil. On the end of the first day, when everybody probably have left the room, and this was replicated on the Business Council, the same thing. The Russian finance minister, Sulyanov, he said something which was absolutely essential. He said, from now on, the NDB may, very important, may become the fundamental lender for projects and macro projects across the BRICS sphere. And then the keywords, bypassing SWIFT. That's the message. And this is something that I think, well, all of us were waiting to hear something like this, and especially everybody that followed the preparations for Kazan last year in Russia and after from Kazan to Rio, like this Chinese report, right? He said it out loud specifically, and this was replicated the day after by Maxim Orekshin, which is I would say he's the #1 Putin direct economic advisor. There are three guys. He's one of those three, right? And at the end of the business council, Orekshin, he was with the Russian delegation. There were very few. We were around as well. So we were a small group of 10, 12 people. And he said exactly what had been said in public for the first time by the Russian finance ministers. So this is this was the Russian contribution, which the Russian way, very discreet, but setting the tone. You see, look, we are basically trying all these models in our BRICS lab, payment systems, forms of payment, digital, non-digitals, CBDC, BRICS, M-Bridge, going into BRICS Bridge, you name it. But the most important thing is trade in our own currencies. And when there's lending coming from the NDB, it has to be in our own currencies as well. This means, once again, bypassing SWIFT. So the ones with the brain in Washington, if they were tuned to it.
And bypassing the dollar, of course. Because if you bypass the SWIFT and you trade in local currencies, then the dollar isn't going to be involved.
They understood what Silvanov was saying. And that's the threat. You don't need to talk about de-dollarization when you're not practicing a de-dollarization. You're practicing ways toward de-dollarization. And then yesterday, Ryabkov, deputy foreign minister of Russia, who was the #1 Russian Sherpa for BRICS last year, he said once again, we are not going towards de-dollarization. What we're doing is increasing trade in our mutual currencies. So Ryabkov probably has to, if he's talking to the Americans, he has to repeat that day after day until, start getting into their heads, But this was very, very obvious from the discussions in Rio, from the discussions in the sideline, this, I would say, the top day of the pre-summit, which was the BRICS Business Council meeting, and afterwards, and what they are doing afterwards, and now with this Trump avalanche against Brazil immediately after the summit in Rio, this is on the table, not on the physical table like in Rio, but over the phone. Like they're talking to each other, said, you see what they're doing? Brazil, it's Brazil, anyone can be next. So how are we going to react? Well, the Brazilians they're starting to do the right thing, in fact. They are already in close contact with, especially in Asia and in Africa, and they're finding new markets. They don't need the American market. If Trump actually slaps this 50%, Lula already said, okay, I will slap 50% back. And this is under a reciprocity law, respecting the Brazilian constitution. And we are already looking for new partners. And everybody all around the global south, they are interested. Brazil sells stuff that everybody wants to buy. Steel, iron, planes, plane parts, coffee, soya beans, you name it. Everybody wants to buy that. They don't need to rely on the American market, which, by the way, if I'm not mistaken, is less than 2% of Brazil's foreign trade. It's not GDP. 1.8% of Brazil's GDP. That's not too much. So Brazil can find new partners all across the global south. So if Trump goes ahead, it will backfire. But the bigger picture, Danny and all of you, that's very, very serious because it's no holds barred now. It's hot war, hybrid war, underground war, economic war, trade war, tariff war, you name it.
Yeah.
And this tells all of us the level of desperation in the American ruling classes. Trump is just a lowly messenger of these people.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it, Pepe. And many people are surmising, Pepe, that Trump's foreign policy is in large part being driven by more established members of this ruling classes, like Lindsey Graham.
Okay, so I'm going to stop it here. I'm going to come back to this on Tuesday night, okay, in my next show, because much more of this video is very important. Okay, we've gone through about half of the interview with Pepe, but there's much more to come. Okay, and it's very, very important. But I thought the remarks, okay, on Brazil and the beginning of Trump's war on BRICS were very, very important. I thought that also Pepe's synthesis of what the conference was about and what accomplished, okay, was very, very important. I think the basic lesson we all have to learn from this is BRICS is marching on, and it's marching on fast. And it's going to cause a tremendous upsurge in trade all over the world. And much of that trade is going to be in local currencies. It's not going to be in dollars. So that means that the total percentage of world trade transactions, the total percentage of that in dollars is going to be declining. So we're going to see a slow decline in the percent of transactions that's done in dollars. Over the next 5 years, maybe we'll see a decline in 10% or something like that. I don't know how much we'll see in terms of aggressive kind of, de-dollarization. I'm sure that will be coming over the next 5 years also. But from the standpoint of the United States, the immediate consequence will just be a decline in the dollar's importance in international trade. So we're going to have to stop relying on economic forms of blackmail of other countries.
And that's a good thing.
And that's a good thing because it's in line with the fact that the multipolar world is emerging and getting stronger. And that world is going to be more collaborative and more peaceful than the world we see now, as long as the United States doesn't get too desperate and in its desperation starts the Third World War, okay, in earnest. Now, Colonel Wilkerson thinks that's already started, and he may be right, but there's a good possibility also that these particular skirmishes are not going to get worse and worse over a period of time because the United States may back off at some point and force Israel to back off. And we may get a resolution which is consistent with the growth and the strengthening of the multipolar world. I certainly hope that is going to be the case. I think the possibility is there. But I'm also afraid that Larry Wilkerson is right, in his analysis. So let us go away from this video for a time. As I say, I'm going to return to it on Tuesday. But it's time to check in on your comments now to see if there are any. No,
A quiet night.
it's certainly a quiet night. It's if we don't have any people coming aboard from YouTube.
It is very odd.
Yes, it is very odd, and I don't know why that's the case. We are definitely streaming to YouTube, and of course, we're getting a lot of attendance from Twitter. We now have 6,508 views from Twitter, so that's been increasing rather steadily, and will continue to increase because we, still have more than an hour of the stream to go. So we'll get into the realm of 8,000 or 9,000 views coming, but it's going to be mostly from Twitter.
Right. Well, let me share it out again on YouTube.
Okay.
I shared it before. I'll share it again.
Okay, let's see what happens there. But it's amazing that we're not getting people coming on YouTube.
Right. It's shocking, actually.
Yeah, because it has been shared. Okay, on YouTube. So, anyway, there are no comments to consider then. So let's go on. And, okay, there's an article here. Would you like to take that article, Dee?
Sure.
It's a very good article from Pepe, by the way. So it's a choice piece.
Okay, let me get over there.
Okay, it appeared, in the UNS Review. And it's okay. When you're ready, you can take it away.
Okay, destroy Russia, fail. No problem. Let's destroy China. Pepe Escobar. Yep, Pepe Escobar, July 25th, 2025. Never underestimate the incoming tsunami of disruptive, quote, analysis and predictive programming already embedded in the hybrid war on China and the larger war on BRICS.
So that caption is a Pepe creation.
Mm-hmm. Never underestimate the incoming tsunami of disruptive, quote, analysis and predictive programming already embedded in the hybrid war on China and the larger war on BRICS. Cue to the latest 128-page report by the Hudson Institute in D.C. titled "Oh So Prophetically, China After Communism, Preparing for a Post-CCP China." You are fully entitled to react in a, quote, Knights Who Say Nigh, Monty Pythonish way when confronting this insane absurdity. But make no mistake, they take it very seriously. U.S. think tank land is a master of telegraphing regime change, dreams, and existential fears years in advance in excruciating detail. That was the case of the Tawdry Rand report on blowing up Russia on several fronts. On that Tawdry Brookings report on dismembering Persia, actually Iran, now it's the turn of the most powerful of the new Primakov Triangle, RIC, in BRICS China. They are really playing, quote, light my fire on steroids, believing a sudden regime collapse. Okay, Joe, if you can scroll a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry.
In China is now entirely unthinkable. They hark back to the old OSS, the precursor to the CIA, and its ops in China during World War II, to suggest that, quote, U.S. Special Operations Forces, SOF, can help stabilize a post-CCP China.
I think it's so strange that these people, okay, in the CIA, the people in the intelligence agencies at large, think that after so many years, there's a possibility of overturning the regime in China.
I know, it's stupid.
This is a regime that has lifted 800 million people out of grinding poverty.
Yeah.
This is a regime that has been and continues to be enormously successful in terms of delivering the goods to the Chinese people. How can the intelligence agencies even begin to contemplate that going to be able to overthrow this regime? The possibilities are much greater that our American regime here will be overthrown long before the Chinese regime is ever overthrown, because we're not delivering the goods to our people.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't understand where their thinking comes from. I mean, they're immersed in a world of their own. They're not connected to reality. There's no way they can overturn the government of China and their way of doing things. Not until there are many failures they can point to in what China's accomplishing. But anyone who's been watching videos of the accomplishments of China, all the marvelous things they're doing,
Yeah.
contrast them with what we are not doing here. And
Yeah, we're the losers on the block.
and it boggles the mind that they could still be thinking about this. Okay, please go on.
Okay. Okay. Mediocre xenophobe extraordinaire Gordon Chang advises DC to, quote, get American businesses and citizens out of China, and to, quote, remove Beijing, quote, entities from important sectors of the U.S. economy. There's the inevitable call for the U.S. to, quote, protect human rights during a transitional period, and U.S. intervention, quote, to prevent ethnic violence, civil wars, and political retribution, with a special focus on China's 5 autonomous regions: Guangxi, Xinjiang, Tibet, Inner Mongolia, and Ningxia. Yes, let's build a Disneyland in Tibet. After the color revolution, regime change op is on a roll. Quote, post-communist China can establish a constitutional democracy and draft a new constitution, all supervised by the Emperor of Chaos, of course, which will define, quote, China's relationship with Taiwan, and even, quote, what the new country's name should be.
I mean,
It's so ridiculous. It's maddening.
Dreamland. This is dreamland.
It is dreamland.
It
I
is.
would love for China to come have suggestions about how we can improve the USA.
Well, I don't need China to make suggestions about how to improve the USA.
Well, like the USA is always in the business of telling other people what they should be doing.
I know.
Well, China should do that with us, all failures and what needs to be changed.
Yes. Please go on.
Quote, the high-speed train of One internationalization. It will be a blast to observe the reaction of Chinese citizens on Weibo, TikTok, and Gonsha to this so benign demolition enterprise. Of course, this document cannot be taken seriously as a recommended strategy policy. It barely qualifies as shabby psyops, shallow propaganda carrying several embedded PhDs in cognitive dissonance. The target is not Chinese public opinion, but actually masses of semi-illiterate Americans, brainwashed 24/7 for eons on the threat posed by evil commies and evil muskies and the Ayatollahs. That's true, the brainwashed people.
Yes.
Talk about clash of civilizations for sub dummies. Yep, I propose as a realist anecdote our recent conversation hosted by Guancha in Shanghai involving Professor Wang Jing, Tricontinental founder Vijay Prashad, and myself on the larger war of the empire of chaos against China and BRICS.
Yeah, I'd really like to
Yes.
see that conversation. I think I'll look into that. That might be a good prospect for Tuesday.
Yes.
On the other hand, it might not. It looks like it's in Chinese.
Oh no. Well, see if they have, English version.
Yeah, I think there is an English version here in some way. Anyway, I'll take a look at it and see if it'll provide something for Tuesday. It might be really interesting.
Right. Add to it some fine observations by Mao Yangang, who's now chief strategist at the CICC Investment Bank, formerly with the China State Administration of Foreign Exchange, part of the People's Bank of China, and a connoisseur of the empire as he got his PhD in Princeton. Mao recently delivered a quite intriguing speech at Peking University, published as a CICC report in early June.
Yeah,
So,
he slipped and used the old spelling, of Peking. I guess it's probably changed to Beijing University by now.
okay. So, let's start with de-dollarization. Mao argues that, quote, building a multipolar currency system requires policy coordination and exchange rate flexibility among major currency issuing economies. Now, two key obstacles that once constrained the internationalization of the renminbi: high interest rates and a persistent depreciation expectations during periods of trade tensions have begun to reverse. Translation: from now on, China has a wealth of possibilities to leverage its global trade to promote the internationalization of the yuan. On the American ability to maintain the US dollar's reserve currency status, Mao points to two factors, quote, whether the United States can continue to lead the technological revolution, and whether it can preserve the advantages of its financial system, such as the Federal Reserve's independence and the self-regulating and corrective capabilities of its financial markets.
Yes, I don't know how much faith I have in either of those.
I know, right?
And okay, even if they occur, I'm not sure whether they are advantages compared to the Chinese system.
Mm.
But please go on.
Yet, what's accelerating now is rather the, quote, fragmentation of the international monetary system. So we should expect increased use of yuan in payment settlements and as a, quote, store of value. That's already happening all across BRICS.
He's right. That is happening all across BRICS. Much more trade in the yuan than we've seen in the past. And the reason why that's going on is because if you're going to do business in local currencies, and so many nations are doing lots and lots of business with China, then of course the yuan is going to be more and more important just by virtue of that.
Yes. Maya points to the key vector. The yuan is now, quote, a low interest currency, while the US dollar is high interest.
Because of the stupid Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
I mean,
Trump,
that's stupid. They should be following a zero interest rate a kind of policy and leave it to the Congress to adjust the fiscal policy of the United States.
Mhm.
That is the best way to handle things. Please go on.
Trump 2.0 tariffs, quote, on all countries have contributed to the appreciation of the yuan. This high-speed train is now leaving the station. Quote, by leveraging China's manufacturing strengths in sectors such as machinery, electronics, and new energy equipment, China is encouraging BRICS nations and partners to use the yuan, quote, for trade settlement, thereby creating a self-sustaining cycle driven by, quote, real trade demand. This is the system those clowns want to regime change.
Absolutely, absolutely. He's right, completely right.
They never learn. Well, they did not learn anything out of the collective West humiliation in the proxy war in Ukraine. A top old school hand of the deep state, now retired and familiar with the glory days of the OSS, sums it up. Relevant excerpts of our conversations. Quote, the US and Europe are already at war with Russia and they are losing it. The US has 20,000 armed troops in Europe to face Russia. NATO forces are largely a figment of the imagination. Yep. Ukraine is nothing but a front in the US battle for control of the Eurasian landmass, a La Mackinder. The US cannot supply both Israel and Europe at the same time. It has overstretched itself. As for Europe, it has no army of any consequence, and most of its equipment is antiquated. All of it is pure bluff.
Yes, unquote.
Yeah, yes. He adds, quote, the Europeans are waking up to the fact that the US has a moat around it so that it can be reached only by ICBMs and submarine missiles, but Europe is in itself indefensible as short-range conventional missiles can destroy it. Nukes are not required to destroy Europe in one day, but a rain of Russian missiles, quote, end quote. Now, compare with Russia's top negotiator in the Istanbul Kabuki, historian Medinsky, when asked whether Moscow fears new sanctions by the EU and the US. Quote, this is not a question for us, not for the negotiating group. I can tell you this. After the revolution and civil war in 1920, again, another historical reference, we had not only sanctions, we had an absolute diplomatic and economic blockade of Soviet Russia from everyone. Everyone. It did not prevent us from winning World War II. Nothing will prevent Russia from winning now. The only question is the price of victory and the time it takes to achieve it. End quote. This is something that will never sink in amongst think tanks in DC as much as the technological accomplishments now visible of the Made in China 2025 plan will never sink in. Enter bluster, hubris, the regime change obsession, and worse. Because if the US ruling psycho killers finally conclude they cannot maintain their unilateral world hegemony, even via war, they will abandon their cherished think tank quote reports for good and even resort in despair to a Samson option.
So that final paragraph
Mm-hmm.
suggests, okay, that Pepe agrees with Colonel Wilkerson that there's a danger point, okay, that's coming where the U.S. concludes that it's not going to be able to maintain itself as the hegemon in the world.
No.
And there will be tremendous pressure to use a Samson option, not just for Israel to use the Samson option, but for the United States to use the Samson option. So we are entering very hopeful times because the multipolar world, okay, is truly emerging, and the progress towards it, okay, that's being made is really wonderful. But at the same time, the danger grows that will have an extreme reaction here in the United States, and that will result in a nuclear war that will get rid of all of us. And that is one of my fears, right now. I do think we're in strong danger of that happening.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back to see if we have any comments yet. No, still not. We're getting close to 8,000 views on Twitter. We'll probably end up with somewhere around 9,000 or 9,500 for the day. But we don't have any participation from YouTube, okay, at all. Okay, even though we are, I think, certainly streaming to YouTube at this point.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, so this is very strange. So let us go then to the next of our pieces. Let's keep the momentum going here. We're running pretty much on time for the evening, which is pretty rare. Here we go. The next piece is from Larry Johnson, and I will take that on. It's called NATO Expansion, the root cause of the war in Ukraine. And this was done on the 23rd of July, 2025 by Larry C. Johnson. And there's the map of NATO enlargement. And you can see how large, the enlargement was. And this is a very clever kind of graphic. It shows the original size of NATO from 1949 to 1982, and then the gradual expansion with the end of the Cold War and the collapse of the Soviet Union. And you see that East Germany was incorporated into West Germany and therefore into NATO in 1990. And then there was a great deal of expansion in 1999 when Poland and the Czech Republic came in. Okay, and when Hungary came in, and then we had further expansion in 2004, and then a final expansion of 2009, but this graphic doesn't cover the recent expansion to Finland and Sweden, which we just are seeing now, which is, I think, the most idiotic expansion of all. I think the idiots are the Swedes and the Finns, because they had absolutely no reason to join NATO. But going on with the article, I know there's a lot of interest in the Jeffrey Epstein story and the new revelations from Tulsi Gabbard about President Obama and his team's efforts to fan the flames of Russiagate. I've been all over the Russiagate matter since 2017. Here's the link to a piece I published on December 28, 2018, with the nifty title, "The Trump Coup is a Threat to Our to the Republic." I'm glad The information is finally coming out, but I knew this 7 years ago. What took them so long? While the revolutions like Tulsi, are completely legit, I think she's releasing this information now to distract attention away from the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. Trump is getting killed in the polls. Reportedly, he is down 40% on this issue. For now, I want to focus on the war in Ukraine. The SMO, and clarify the motivation of Russia, and their objective for ending that conflict. We keep hearing the phrase root causes. Russia wants to address the root causes. Okay, what are those? Larry says, I think it's pretty simple. Read the draft treaty that Vladimir Putin presented to Joe Biden December 2021, and then you will understand. To spare you reading the entire document, I've linked to it in the next paragraph. I'm going to summarize the key points. The draft, quote, treaty between the United States of America and the Russian Federation on security guarantees, unquote, that Russia presented to Biden in December 2021 outlined a series of far-reaching security demands, reflecting Russia's intent to reshape the post-Cold War security architecture in Europe. Here are the key points from the published text. 1. No further NATO expansion. The U.S. would commit to preventing further enlargement of NATO, specifically barring Ukraine and other former Soviet republics from joining the alliance. This included a ban on NATO military activity in Ukraine, Eastern Europe, the Caucasus, and Central Asia. 2. No deployment of U.S. forces or weapons in certain countries. The treaty would forbid the U.S. from deploying military forces or weaponry in countries that joined NATO after May of 1997, such as Poland, the Baltic states, the Romanias, and others. NATO infrastructure would have to be rolled back to pre-1997 locations. 3. A ban on intermediate range types of missiles. Both Russia and the U.S. would be prohibited from deploying ground-launched intermediate range and shorter range types of missiles outside their national territories, as well as in areas of their own territory where such missiles could strike the other's territory. Okay, so here it's important to note that if there were agreement on this, this would result in a ban on the Oreshnik, the new invention by the Russians. They would be prohibited from deploying the Oreshnik and using it. This would be a tremendous gain for Europe, because Russia now has 300 Oreshniks, and that's enough to destroy the capitals of every one of the NATO nations. Just saying. Number 4, limit military maneuvers and activities. Limits on heavy bombers and surface warship deployments. Both sides would restrict the operation of heavy bombers and warships in areas from which they could strike targets on the other territory. Note, in September 2020, Trump's DOD authorized a B-52 to fly along the Ukrainian coast in the Black Sea. Very, very dangerous, because that would be very, very close to Russian territory, of course. I mean, it might have been a trigger for a new war. Stupid. 5, nuclear weapons restrictions. All nuclear weapons would be confined to each country's own national territory. Neither side could deploy nuclear weapons outside its borders. Note, U.S. just sent a batch of nukes to England. Why do we do that? That's so stupid. Withdrawal of all U.S. nuclear weapons from Europe, and elimination of existing infrastructure for their deployment abroad. 6, a mutual security pledge. Each side would agree not to take on any security measures that could undermine the core security interests of the other party. Number 7, establishment of consultation mechanisms. Proposals included the renewal or strengthening of direct consultation mechanisms, such as the NATO-Russia Council, and the establishment of a crisis hotline. I think the establishment of a crisis hotline, that's something we used to have before, and that served us to avoid war with the Soviet Union, and it served us well. I've never understood why we got rid of the hotline. That's blatantly stupid. It wasn't hurting anyone. Number 8, indivisibility of security principle. Included a reaffirmation that the security of one state cannot come at the expense of the security of another, formalizing Russia's interpretation of the, quote, indivisible security concept. Instead of engaging the Russians in talks on these matters, Biden's Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, essentially told Foreign Minister Lavrov that Russia could take the treaty and shove it up its own ass. I didn't say that. That was Larry. So much for diplomacy. Had the U.S. agreed to discuss the treaty with the Russians, the SMO would not have been launched in February of 2022. So that's the immediate cause of the war, that Antony Blinken told Foreign Minister Lavrov that Russia could take the treaty and shove it up its own ass. That's the cause of the war. Had the U.S. agreed to... but that is the critical point. That is, the U.S. had no intention of seeking a peaceful settlement with Russia. That's even more the cause of the war. For example, the CIA, using DoD cover, had already invested tens of millions of dollars in biolabs scattered throughout Ukraine. According to Russia's Ministry of Defense, it recovered documents that identified a network of 30 U.S.-funded biological laboratories in Ukraine that were conducting research on dangerous pathogens as part of a bioweapons program. What idiocy. What idiocy this is. Ukraine was nothing more than a pawn in the Western game of strategic chess, with the ultimate goal of wrecking Russia and taking control of its natural resources. The West was not ready to quit that game. I don't know if it's still not ready to quit that game. It probably still is not ready. Until NATO's threat to Russia is taken off the table, the Russians' war with the West will continue. It represents an existential threat to the Russian people. The talks in Turkey between Russia and Ukraine do nothing to address or resolve the root causes. And that's this piece. I think it's a very excellent piece. By Larry Johnson. Any comments, Steve?
Just every single thing we discussed tonight, it just shows the ignorance of the U.S.
It does. It shows the ignorance of the U.S. It shows the foolishness of the U.S. It shows the aggressiveness of the U.S. It shows that the U.S. is the cause of all these conflicts because of our objective of remaining the hegemon and of dominating the world.
And we're weakening ourselves in the midst of all this.
Weakening ourselves in the midst of all this, so we cannot possibly win any of these wars.
No,
We are on a suicidal course.
exactly.
A suicidal course for the United States, and possibly a suicidal course for all of humankind. We got to stop.
Yes, we do.
We just got to stop. So let's get to the last piece for tonight. I had to take this on because, well, it was a pretty good piece from Larry about Tulsi Gabbard's revelations.
Okay.
There's Tulsi, and there is Obama looking grim.
Yes.
My friend, says Larry, Randy Credico, is angry with Tulsi for trotting out the newly declassified documents showing that Obama, John Brennan, Jim Clapper, and James Comey conspired to convince the American public that Trump's surprising win in the 2016 presidential election was because of Russian interference. He's not mad about the content. He is angry because this appears to be a deliberate strategy to avert attention away from the Jeffrey Epstein fiasco. While the intelligence that Tulsi has released is credible and certainly implicates Obama and his team in a conspiracy to defraud the American public, I agree with Randy. Why now? Why now? Would you like to continue with this, D? I guess enthusiasm. Okay, I went on with this, and it was really your turn.
Okay.
Okay.
I was writing extensively on Russiagate starting in 2016. My blogs, No Quarter, was still operating, and I was in touch with former colleagues who were still active in the intelligence community. They told me that the Russiagate was a contrivance orchestrated by the CIA with an assist from the FBI. But it was not just the CIA. The CIA was using foreign intelligence services, which included MI6, GCHQ, the Australian Secret Service, ASIS, and others, which started in the summer of 2015 with the CIA compiling information collected by the Brits, the French, and the Belgians, all on aspiring U.S. candidates running for president, except for Hillary Clinton. By January 2016, it had evolved into a complex international intelligence operation designed to paint Donald Trump as a tool of the Russians. So, here is the question. Why didn't Donald Trump declassify this information in his first term? Why didn't Trump direct Director of the National Intelligence to conduct an investigation and declassify the information back then? The Directors of National Intelligence, DNI, during Trump's first presidency term, 2017 to 2021, were Dan Coats, Joseph Maguire, Richard Grenell, and John Ratcliffe. I indicated above, I am happy that this information is now being divulged, but I cannot ignore the appearance that it is being released now in order to bury interest in the Jeffrey Epstein story and Trump's 15-year relationship with the man. There are some prominent podcasters who have a pretty large audience, e.g. Candace Owens, Dave Smith, Chris Hedges, and Joe Rogan, who are pushing back at Trump and vowing to continue to focus on the story. Candace, who is a longtime Trump supporter, is outraged by Trump's handling of this matter and is bringing a lot of heat on Trump. Yeah, because she's got a lot of Trump supporters.
She does.
Yeah. The CBS News YouGov poll conducted July 18th to the 21st carries some very bad news for Trump. President Donald Trump's approval rating among voters under 30 has plunged over the past 6 months, according to the latest CBS NewsGov poll conducted July 18th to the 21st. The survey conducted among 1,729 adults found that 66% of the voters aged 18 to 29 disapprove of Trump's job performance. Only 28% of young voters approve, while 6% said they are unsure. Just 6 months earlier, a January CBS YouGov survey found this same age group was the most optimistic about Trump's return to the White House, with 67 expressing optimism.
Okay, I have to say, that was stupidity by this group, the 18 to 29 group.
Yeah.
I mean, they did have Trump's whole first term to evaluate how he was likely to rule. So why there was that optimism, I don't know. I mean, other than having optimism that he might make some kind of peace with Putin, there was no other reason to, feel optimistic.
Or two, you have to look at it this way: optimistic that he was going to stop what was going on in Gaza, like he was promising.
Oh yeah, there should have been no optimism about that. Not after he took $100 million from Adelson.
Right, but they could have, thought maybe he will change something in some way.
Maybe.
Overall, Trump's net approval rating stands at -15, the lowest of his second term. About 55% of Americans disapprove of his job performance, while 41% approve and 4% are unsure. Real Clear Politics polling average puts Trump's disapproval rating at around 53%, with about 46% approving.
It's astonishing that his ratings aren't significantly lower than these, because he's done such a bad job on the tariffs. It's ridiculous. Every day, there's ridiculousness. He's done such a bad job, when it comes to immigration. I mean, the violations of civil rights and civil liberties in this are just horrendous. It's a horror. The whole scene is a horror. And people don't seem to see this. I mean, that guy's going to get us into civil war.
Yeah. On key issues, the polls showed negative net approval across the board. National security at -2, immigration at -6, foreign policy at -11, jobs and economy -12, foreign trade at -15, and inflation prices at -29. Inflation remains a top concern for Americans, with 21% identifying it as their most important issue, followed by jobs and economy at 14%, healthcare at 10%, and immigration at 9%. The poll also revealed broad public interest in government transparency regarding the Jeffrey Epstein case. 81% of Americans want all documents related to Epstein released. 2/3, including 84% of Democrats and 53% of Republicans, think the government is covering up evidence regarding his client list and death. I don't think Trump can reverse this, especially if new revelations drop, which I expect. Garland Nixon and I touched on this towards the end of our hour together, but we spend most of our time together discussing NATO as the root cause of the war in Ukraine.
Okay, so I thought that Larry's supposition here,
right,
that this whole issue was introduced by Tulsi in order to be a distraction.
Yes, I think so.
From the Epstein thing. But that it still has interesting kinds of implications, because it looks like the Trump administration is setting itself up to try to arrest Obama and prosecute him for his role in this. But I can't see that that is possible,
I don't see it as possible either.
because the Supreme Court has ruled, of course, that presidents have immunity from prosecution as long as their actions are conducted in their role as president of the United States. And certainly when when he was perpetrating this fraud on the American public, he was acting as president. He was doing what he thought was best for the United States, however misguided and arrogant and stupid he may have been. So it seems to me that the first thing that's going to happen if they arrest him is, okay, he's going to ask for a court injunction to stop the prosecution
Mm-hmm.
on grounds of the immunity granted to presidents by the Supreme Court. I don't see how Trump can stop that. And if he does, his lawyers do find some grounds on which to stop that, those very same grounds can be used later on Trump himself.
Mm-hmm.
So, it seems to me this idea of arrest of Obama is going nowhere, but making more and more trouble for Trump,
Mm-hmm.
resulting in more and more of his poll ratings. And there are some people I've been talking to who say, well, it doesn't matter what his poll ratings are, because he's going to consolidate a dictatorship, and he's going to undermine, all future elections as dictator. And so the polling, really doesn't matter in this particular situation. Well, I think there's a case to be made for this,
Mm-hmm.
but there's also, a case to be made that once popular support for a dictator falls to a certain level, it is impossible for the dictator to remain in control. For example, the Romanian dictator, at the end of the period of the Soviet Union, Ceausescu, there were very few dictators who had tighter control on their population than he did. And yet, when the popular tide, began to flow against him, and it was so strong, and people were going into the streets and staying there and insisting that he got out, even with the secret police and the armed forces on his side, he could not stay in power. He had to give in. He had to leave. And that was true, in, many other popular uprisings that were occurring at the time, and that the communists were not able to stop in spite of their control of the means of violence in their states. So, I don't know if the fact that he's become a dictator, is going to save Trump. Of course, we're probably going to see a test of, this proposition, unfortunately, maybe fairly soon, because he's becoming so unpopular. And if he doesn't change course in many of these things over the next 6 months, he could be gone by the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly there's a good possibility that Vance is going to turn against him. Because Vance wants to be president.
Yes.
And he's got, is it the 24th Amendment, the 25th Amendment? I always forget what it is. But that's a tool that can be used to replace the president by his cabinet, and by the vice president. And even if Trump is himself, not afraid enough of a popular uprising. I think the other cabinet members might be quite afraid of that and might be very much inclined to try to, take Trump out of the presidency.
Mhm.
And they'd be able to make a deal with Vance to stop pursuing certain kinds of policies. And probably Stephen Miller would be gone. And that would make a tremendous difference in the pursuit of the kinds of domestic policies that Trump is pursuing. So I don't know that being a dictator would make Trump as secure as he might think it would. But I also think that all this remains to be seen.
Right.
And I don't know how things are going to work out, in the end. So we still have no action on YouTube at all. And I still have no idea why that's occurring. We usually have YouTube people coming in. I mean, it's not all Facebook people who comment.
Right.
There are some people who comment both on Facebook and on YouTube.
Yes.
And they haven't been here tonight, so I don't understand what this is all about. We're at 9,317 views which are obviously mostly coming from Twitter,
Right.
since we're not streaming on Facebook, today. But so that's interesting. But
Mhm.
it doesn't compare to our last stream on Tuesday night, which had 13.2K views on Twitter. So I don't know how to account for that difference either.
Well, it's Sunday evening. Sunday evenings are not always.
Yeah,
You
that's
don't, you don't always have a large group on Sunday evenings.
Yeah, I usually don't stream on Sunday evenings, so I don't experience Sunday evenings. So maybe that's the reason for it. But still, the idea that there would be no people on YouTube coming in,
That's weird.
that is definitely weird. That is definitely weird. But anyway, that seems to mean that we're going to knock off early tonight. Okay,
I know, right?
this is the earliest we've knocked off for some time, and I think Bonnie is probably glad of that.
Mhm. Well, you should try this evening if you can see with getting that Facebook fixed. So this way, well, you could always rebroadcast on, YouTube again too, as well as Facebook. And like around say 9 o'clock in the morning, or even 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock in the morning. Because you figured that overseas, like 5 hours ahead of time, a lot of the places 5, 6 hours ahead of time. And then also in the U.S., people say that are taking trains. They're, and some people getting up early in the morning and may watch it.
Okay, so basically, I could rebroadcast the YouTube stream, right?
Yes.
Okay. Can I rebroadcast the Twitter stream?
Yes, you could do them all.
But I'm not sure where I get the stream from.
You get it in StreamYard, and you go into the library on StreamYard, and then they have it when you point those three dots, and they ask you, about. Let me see what they say. I think they say about going live again or something. Let me take a look and see
Okay.
what they say. But yeah, because I rebroadcast. I think they use the word rebroadcast. Let me see. StreamYard. Let me go over there. And I go into my library. Yes, you hit those three dots. You'll see that on the right-hand side.
Okay.
And it has, I mean, you could edit the title as well, but it has schedule live stream. So you can schedule another live stream. And actually, it's just, you're putting the show on again, and you hit the button there, and then it has select the destinations, and you choose the time.
Okay, so where do I get the streams from? From YouTube?
No, you get it. It's all in on StreamYard. You go back to StreamYard. Go into StreamYard to the library on StreamYard, and they have the three dots on the side, and you hit the three dots on the side for what you want to, which would be this show. You'll see it there, and then you it has to you hit the thing where it says schedule a live stream, and it'll bring you along.
Okay, I'll see if I can get that to work tomorrow. We'll see if I can get that to work.
Okay, yeah, then play it, your show again, yes.
Yeah.
Because another big time is usually in the afternoon. From what I understand, around 4 o'clock, 4 o'clock.
Mm.
Or more so 4 o'clock, from what I've heard.
Okay. Thank you, Dee.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay, so I guess it's time to say goodnight.
Yes. Good night, everyone.
So thank you for coming and for helping with the stream.
Oh, you're welcome. And I was going to say tomorrow night, Monday, Madeline and I are going to be on at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time.
Okay, great. And what will you be discussing?
We're going to look at the news of the day and decide something to talk about.
Okay. Okay, well, I hope it's very interesting. I think usually Mondays are very interesting for news.
Yes, we'll see every day's crazy, the world we live in.
Yeah, it's true. There's a lot of crazy things going on. By the way, I understand that the signups for Jeremy Corbyn have now grown to 400,000.
Oh, wow, great.
Yeah. That's,
Mhm.
I wonder how high that can go.
Yeah.
Okay, they still have to have the election, don't they? The formal election. I mean, I know Farage has taken over as the prime minister, but he said he wanted to have an election soon.
We'll see.
So the question is, how well will Corbyn's new party do in the election?
Yeah, we'll have to see.
That's an interesting question, I think.
Yes.
Okay. So good night, Dee.
Yeah, good night. Good night, Bonnie.
Good night.
Yes, feel better soon.
Thank you. Well, it's
You're
probably
welcome.
going to take maybe 2 to 3 months. Okay, because they said 6 weeks to healing, and then there's a period of physical therapy she'll have to go through.
Okay.
Okay, but maybe it stops hurting before then. It could stop.
Well, that would be good.
Yeah. But supposedly the arm gets very stiff,
Mm.
and that's why you have to do the physical therapy. Now we have a friend of ours here, who had a problem with her shoulder, the same kind of problem with her shoulder,
Okay.
and she went through it, and that's what she had to do. She got the full use of her shoulder back. Okay, I don't know if you heard that, honey. That was.
I did, and she waved her arm.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, good night again, Dee.
Yeah, good night.
I'm ending the stream. Okay, now.